Hi, in this video I want to talk a little bit about the second CERT unit, fire safety and fire extinguishers, and some of the modifications, the changes that we've made here in Brazil, in CERT Brazil. First off, when we talk about utility control, I like to actually have a fuse box. This model here is the older box available here in Brazil in some of the older houses. And it's interesting that the switches, the circuit breakers, are written in English, on and off. So I consider it quite important that our kids understand what's what. So we get them just testing them and trying out the circuit breakers. Here in Brazil, people use a 13 kilo gas bottle, not this size obviously, and for cooking in just about every house. So we have the control system here from an old cooking bottle on what used to be a little money bank, a little piggy bank in the format of a gas bottle, so that we can show them how to turn the gas on and off, and we explain that they need to check the validity on the hoses, which will wear out in time. Now, to make sure they understand what's on and what's off, and any sort of valve controlling whether it be liquids or gases, I just have a simple example here where they can see the difference between the lever being aligned with the pipe or the lever being at right angles to the pipe. So they can understand the principle that usually applies to any valve that will shut off, whether it be gas or water or whatever. Unfortunately, here in Brazil, it's not very common to have smoke detectors. In fact, they're very hard to come across. But we show them to both the kids and the teen certs and the adults in our CERT courses, and as there's been a lot of interest expressed in them, I hope that they do become more common in the future. Now, one of the practical demonstrations that FEMA have for the firefighting module is to set fire to some cotton wool, put it in a glass, close it, and then blow on it to see if it comes alight again. Unfortunately, I have found, I don't know if there's a difference between the cotton wool here in Brazil to maybe that in the US, but when we set fire, according to the manual, you're supposed to be holding it, you light it, drop it in there. I found that just catches fire so quickly that there is a risk of actually maybe setting the school or the hall where we're giving the course on fire. So I prefer just to use candles. We can do the same demonstration. We can show that an oxygen is required for fire, although normally we don't have a lot of success in reigniting it again. But at least it shows the principle, and it has not been as dangerous in my experience as using the cotton wool that we have here. Now, when we talk about the live fire, and we talk about fire extinguishers, in the schools particularly, obviously we do not have conditions to be able to actually set something on fire. So we have made, and this was the best example of what worked for us. It's actually a picture frame, just one of those cheap LCD picture frames, running a video inside a waterproof box with just a power bank or a USB bank that will power it, and then it came with a remote control. So this offers realism, very inexpensive to put together, and just reduces the risks of actually lighting fires, particularly when we're doing teen CERT in the schools. Now, the person who's controlling it can, when we do the fire extinguisher test, which we'll show you in just a moment, they can control the fire, turn it on and off. Now, as far as fire extinguishers go, if we have the funding, back in a number of years ago, it was actually very common to have a 1 kilo dry powder BC extinguisher. It was required in all cars, and so it was quite feasible to be able to get hold of these extinguishers and use them for training. That law is no longer in effect, and it's no longer it's easy to get hold of the 1 kilo extinguishers. What I would have maybe is just even an empty water extinguisher. If we can use if we can get the extinguishers charged and somebody will pay for that, we can use the water, the dry powder, or the CO2. I think that when we do teen CERT, the kids love the CO2 extinguishers because of the noise and the mess that they make. But what we've also found was that we could make our own fire extinguishers. Now this may seem to be a little strange. It's just a plant sprayer. Now we got hold of the keys that you would find in a fire extinguisher, the rings. We actually got them from a company that refilled fire extinguishers for us, and we tie them on with a little bit of rope so that we don't lose them. We then just had to put a hole into the bottle. Now we use that. We also printed off a nice label just showing it is a training extinguisher. Now what we will do is we'll use those, let me see if this one has pressure, so that they can, normally we'd use a bit more pressure than that, and they would be using our fire video, and somebody would be controlling it with a remote control. And so we would do that whole thing, 2 people coming in, the push, aim, squeeze, sweep principle. And we found that these extinguishers, they're inexpensive, obviously there's no problem in refilling them, and yet we are teaching the principles of using a fire extinguisher. So those are just some of the ideas that we found here in Brazil that worked, given our financial reality and the fact that we're doing a lot of training in schools. Thanks.